The Late Show studio was already tense before the cameras turned on. Not chaotic, not loud, just tense in the way that happens when everyone in the room knows something might go wrong, and no one's sure who will pull the trigger. But tonight was explosive from the start. A producer had just warned Stephen, "She's ready for war. She knows what you're planning." Candace Owens was scheduled to appear as the lead guest. It had been pitched as a discussion about young conservative voices, bridging political divides, finding common ground. But that was just the version the public saw. Behind the scenes, there were emails, conditions, and warnings. Candace had only agreed to appear if the conversation remained substantive. That meant real debate, not character assassination. Facts, not comedy hit pieces. Colbert's producers had agreed. Or at least they said they had. But just minutes before they walked onto the set, Stephen got his real marching orders from the network. And Candace came prepared for battle. When Candace finally stepped onto the stage, the atmosphere was immediately hostile. The audience's applause was lukewarm, some even booing. She walked with supreme confidence, smiled at the boos, and sat. Stephen was already at his desk, that intellectual superiority radiating. He didn't even pretend to be welcoming. Stephen opened with venom. He said, "Candace Owens, everyone. The woman who thinks racism ended when Obama was elected. Must be nice in fantasy land." Candace smiled dangerously. She said, "Stephen Colbert, everyone. The man who thinks comedy ended when Trump was elected. Must be profitable in propaganda land." The audience gasped. She'd drawn first blood. Stephen's smile faltered. He said, "I see you're starting with insults." Candace interrupted smoothly. She said, "You literally just called my worldview fantasy land. But when I respond, it's an insult. Classic liberal double standard." Stephen leaned forward aggressively. He said, "Your worldview is dangerous." Candace laughed. She said, "Dangerous to who? Your ratings? Your narrative? Or just to the sheep in your audience who can't handle different opinions?" The audience reacted with anger. Some shouted at her. That's when Candace stood up. Not defensively, confidently. She said, "Oh, did I trigger the trained seals? Should I wait for the applause sign to tell you when to clap for Stephen's next unfunny Trump joke?" Stephen stood too, his face reddening. He said, "How dare you insult my audience?" Candace turned to face the audience directly. She said, "Insult? I'm liberating you. You come here every night to have your biases confirmed. To be told you're good people for hating the right people. You're not an audience, you're a congregation, and he's your pastor of progressivism." The audience erupted in boos and shouts. Stephen tried to regain control. He said, "This is exactly what we expect from." Candace spun on him. She said, "From what? A black woman who thinks for herself? Say it, Stephen. Tell your woke audience what you really think about black conservatives." Now, what happens next is exactly why CBS buried this footage. They don't want you to see what happens when someone exposes the echo chamber, when the audience becomes the story. If you want to see how deep the programming goes, hit that subscribe button right now before they scrub this. Because what Candace reveals about Colbert's audience will shock you. Someone in the audience shouted, "You're a sellout." Candace pointed at them. She said, "There it is." The tolerant left. A white person calling a black woman a sellout for having different ideas. "Stephen, your audience is more racist than any Trump rally I've spoken at." The audience went berserk. Security started moving. Stephen shouted over the noise. He said, "You're just here to provoke." Candace laughed loudly. She said, "I'm here to reveal. Look at them, Stephen. Look at your audience. They can't handle a single dissenting opinion without melting down. You've trained them well." She walked toward the audience. Candace said, "You know what you are? You're NPCs, non-player characters. You react exactly how you're programmed. Stephen says, 'Trump bad,' you clap. I say, 'Think for yourself,' you rage. You're literally proving my point in real time." Several audience members stood up aggressively. Security moved between them and Candace. Stephen tried to use humor. He said, "Maybe we should get you back to your safe space." Candace wheeled on him. She said, "Safe space? Your entire show is a safe space. A safe space for liberals who can't handle debate. Look at your audience. They're about to riot because a black woman won't conform to their expectations. She pulled out her phone. Candace said, "You know what? Let's make this educational. I'm going live right now. America needs to see what liberal tolerance really looks like." Stephen panicked. He said, "You can't live stream from." Candace was already streaming. She said to her phone, "Hey everyone, I'm here at Colbert where the audience is having a breakdown because I called them sheep. Watch the tolerance." She turned the phone toward the angry audience. Several people were standing, shouting, gesticulating wildly. Candace narrated, "Look at them. The party of love and acceptance. Can't handle one black woman with different views. This is your brain on late-night propaganda." Stephen tried to grab her phone. He said, "Stop this." Candace pulled away. She said, "Don't touch me. Now you're getting physical because you're losing? Show everyone who you really are." The audience was in complete chaos. Some trying to leave, others shouting at Candace, others arguing among themselves. Candace addressed them again. She said, "You come here 4 nights a week to be told you're smart for agreeing with a comedian. You're not informed, you're indoctrinated. You're not enlightened, you're entertained. And you're so fragile that one opposing voice sends you into meltdown." A woman in the front row screamed, "You're evil." Candace walked closer. She said, "Evil? For what? For thinking differently? For refusing to be your political pet? You just called a black woman evil for having independent thoughts. The KKK would be proud." That caused an explosion. Multiple audience members rushed toward the stage. Security had to physically hold them back. Stephen shouted, "Get her out. Get her out now." Candace kept streaming. She said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the modern left. They need security to protect them from words. They need force to stop ideas. They're everything they claim to hate." As security approached her, Candace delivered rapid-fire truth bombs. She said, "Your audience isn't diverse in thought. They're a monolith of manufactured rage. You've created an army of zombies who think laughing at Trump jokes makes them intellectuals." Security grabbed her arms. Candace shouted as they dragged her, "This is what happens when you pop their bubble. When you show them the mirror. They can't handle reality, so they remove it." The audience was still in chaos, some cheering her removal, others fighting among themselves. Candace's final words rang out. "Keep clapping for your master, sheep. Keep letting comedians think for you. But remember this moment, when someone dared to tell you the truth." She was dragged off, still streaming, still talking. Stephen stood there, shirt untucked, completely shaken. And what happened next proved everything Candace had said. After Candace's removal, the studio devolved into complete anarchy. The audience wasn't just divided, they were at war with each other. Arguments broke out everywhere. "She was right about us being sheep. She's a fascist. You just proved her point. You're defending a traitor." Stephen tried to restore order. He said, "Please, everyone, let's calm down." But his usual control was gone. The audience wouldn't listen. Some were leaving in disgust, others were shouting at those leaving. The careful curation of his audience had backfired spectacularly. The show cut to commercial, but when they returned, half the audience was gone. Those remaining were still agitated, talking among themselves, ignoring Stephen completely. Stephen tried to continue with a monologue, but every joke fell flat. Someone shouted, "We look like idiots." Another yelled, "She played us." A third voice, "Are we really just trained seals?" Meanwhile, Candace's live stream from the parking lot was going mega viral. Still in real time, she spoke to hundreds of thousands of viewers. What you just saw was mass formation psychosis. An entire audience so programmed they couldn't handle a single opposing view without becoming violent. This is what late-night comedy has created, not informed citizens, but attack dogs for the establishment. She showed her arms where security had grabbed her. She said, "They got physical because I used words. They needed force because they couldn't use facts. This is who they are." Back in the studio, Stephen abandoned the live show entirely. They went to pre-taped segments, but the damage was spreading. Audience members who'd been there started posting their own videos, and surprisingly, many supported Candace's points. One audience member posted, "I've been going to Colbert tapings for years. Tonight made me realize she was right. We are trained to react. We don't think, We just respond to cues. I feel sick. Another wrote, I booed her automatically. Then I realized I couldn't actually refute anything she said. We did look like sheep. We did prove her point. The hashtag Candace exposed Colbert exploded, but more devastating was hashtag #sheep, started by former Colbert audience members questioning their own behavior. CBS executives held an emergency meeting. The footage was deemed unairable in its current form. They tried to edit it down, but there was no way to hide what happened. The audience rebellion, the chaos, Candace's devastating points. It all painted a picture they couldn't spin. They made the decision, kill the episode entirely. Pay the audience members to sign NDAs. Bury the footage. But Candace had her live stream, and audience members had their phones. The full truth started leaking out. Late-night comedy shows started seeing a pattern. Audiences were becoming less responsive. Some started questioning the jokes. The automatic applause decreased. Candace had planted seeds of doubt in the very foundation of their format. A media studies professor analyzed the incident. Owens exposed something we've all known but ignored. These audiences aren't organic. They're cultivated, trained, conditioned to respond. When she held up a mirror, they shattered. Stephen never addressed the incident directly. The show pretended it never happened. But insiders reported he was shaken, paranoid, constantly asking if the audience was really with us or just performing. Months later, at a private event, an audience member who'd been there approached Candace. He said, I was one of the ones shouting at you. You woke me up. I haven't watched late night since. I think for myself now. Candace smiled. She said, that's all I wanted. For people to think. Even if they disagree with me, just think for yourself. The Late Show survived, but something fundamental had broken. The fourth wall between performer and audience had been shattered. The illusion of spontaneous agreement was gone. Other conservative commentators started using Candace's tactics, speaking directly to the audiences, challenging their programming, refusing to play the designated villain role. Candace Owens didn't just get kicked off a show that night. She kicked down the wall between entertainer and audience. She exposed the manufacturing of consent disguised as comedy. She revealed that the real joke was on the people laughing. And in doing so, she did something no conservative had done before. She made the audience the story, made them question their own responses, made them wonder, am I thinking or am I programmed? The revolution wasn't televised. It was live-streamed. And it started with 3 words, you're trained seals. Words that woke up an audience that didn't know they were sleeping.